Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being on our program. We have Manuel Franco here from Southern California, very, very dear friend of mine, also a mentor to me for many, many years on the technical side. Knowledge in the world of printing. I came across his skill, his company, Monarch Litho, in 1994, 95, 96. Used to do some newsprints for us, and it's just a real thrill to know him. One of the discussions him and I have had over the many years is the idea of vocational technical education, given his background, the high school he's been into, the kind of work he does today, and we're going to look into the future. So again, Manuel, thank you for being on our program today.
Thank you for having me and for having this opportunity to be able to discuss these items, which are very, very important and critical for the future.
Absolutely. We are both Salesians. We both went to a Salesian high school. I went to a different one also in Los Angeles. But you went to a very special one, Bosco Tec. Could you tell us what that institution is back then and where it is today?
Bosco Tec, when I joined and went to Bosco Tec, it started as a high school when I went in there. And then as it evolved, and I had the opportunity of being in the first college program that it started and went into from a high school into a 5-year program that on your 3rd year, you started going into a junior college program. 4th and 5th year were a full junior college program. And when you finished the 5th year, you came out with an Associate of Arts degree. So that was an exciting program to get into with a lot of changes focused on technology and focused on the industrial world to make sure that things were going in a certain direction. It was actually established to be able to resolve some of the issues that were related with both the worker, the labor, and the management portion so that they could understand. And part of what Cardinal McIntyre was trying to accomplish in conjunction with the industrial people of that time period was to get a school that the students or the workers understood what they needed to do, but at the same time were prepared to manage and run the business. From that point, it's continued in the focus of technology, although it reverted back to a high school because the challenges of keeping a college going got a little too heavy, and the cost factors just started to take it into a very challenging position. So it decided to go back into a high school model that it had started with when it originally started.
But it still maintains itself as a technical school. So we're going to get into that discussion right now as we evolve into this area. But let's sort of withdraw a little bit back into history, your history. You went into the area of printing. I'm using the term very loosely. You'll clarify it for me, I hope. And sort of tell us, what was that industry like when you started versus where it is today?
When I started in printing, and I go back now, geez, over 40 years. It was an industry where it was the major source of communications, and it still is a very strong source of communications. Printing, and one of the inventors, Gutenberg, who developed the movable type, was recognized as the most important inventor of the millennium because when he brought in type and movable type and started printing, it opened the knowledge base, being able to print and expand it into the world. So for many years, that's exactly what printing has been. The communication area to be able to give and give out to everybody. That's now changed naturally with the onset of technology as far as the internet, the computer, the smartphones, and everything else that's out there. So before we used to go to libraries to look at books and look for books to get our information. Now we go to the internet to get that. So that's changed radically, and where that industry was a very, very strong, one of the strongest in the segment of industries. We're probably the 3rd largest industry in the United States. That is dramatically reduced now because of the onset of the internet and the computers.
I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but you sort of stir the curiosity. As the internet is taking over more of the information base, do you see in the future where print, actual paper book will disappear?
I don't think so. Again, one of the areas that we keep on looking at is that it still takes a lot of energy to keep a computer going, to keep things going as far as it is with the internet. Okay, with print, once you print, that's still a very viable piece that doesn't require any energy source to be able to be used. So that's one of the areas that I'm looking at, that I think print will be viable for many years to come. Not as not useful, but not as used as much, because of the fact that smartphones are so easy to deal with and the information can come across much more readily. But still, it's going to be prevalent for many years to come, I believe. And we see it that it's still being used a lot in the marketing area, in packaging, in areas that people still look for it. So, many times we keep on taking a look, and people still would rather grab a magazine, sit down with a nice cup of coffee and go through it.
I'm one of those individuals. I have a feeling about having a book in my hand. And I see people on Kindle and others, but I've asked them, and I said, have you given up paper? He says, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm going to go back to paper. There's something magical about that. I don't know what it is, but there's a connection there.
Yep, very, very true. And, we print a lot for the government. And one of the things that kind of impressed me is that we print a piece for the soldiers that are in the field, so that they have a source to be able to go through. And if somebody's hurt, they can go through, and it's a whole first aid manual. In fact, a fairly substantial piece of information that they print on plastic to be able to hold and have in the battlefield. And that's because, well, sometimes you're not going to have that source of communication through
the internet. Yeah, I never thought of that. Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you this also. You've seen your industry over 40 years, and tell us about the personnel that was needed back in the original point where you started versus where we are today, given that we have so many articles that say, oh no, technology is not going to fire people, they're going to stay just the same, they'll be at it more, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm sort of a little bit suspicious, if you will, of that kind of information. Well, but someone like yourself, have you seen the evolution of that?
I've seen a tremendous change in the evolution of that in our environment. And we started, it would take, in certain sections, at least 5, 6 people in the creative portion of putting together a piece for print. So by the time somebody wrote it, designed it, typeset it, assembled it, and got the artwork ready, that was 5, 6 people. It went down to 1 person with the onset of the computer. In assembling that artwork into film and plates and everything that has to go to press, that used to be a fairly complex procedure that it would require. We had a staff of about 30, 40 people just to accomplish that process of preparing the artwork into print. Now we're down, that whole process we have down to maybe less than 7, 8 people in the whole department to handle that. We were a company of 300 people. Take it that the demand for print has gone down substantially. We're now at 170 people. Part of that really has come from the technology advancing tremendously. It used to take us, 2 weeks to turn 2 to 3 weeks to turn a job around. Everything from bringing it on and putting it through all its paces. Now we're down to, we can literally turn it around in a couple of days. And that's one of the strengths that we have for the government. We can turn around some substantial pieces of work that they're required within 2 or 3 days. So technology has really changed a lot of areas that have improved productivity. but at the same time, it's reduced the amount of manpower needed to get that done.
Let's go to the second phase of this show, and let me provide a little bit of background. As the viewers may not know, but you do, I travel extensively around the world. I've seen probably 70–80% of the world now, and working on the other 10%, time going on. And one of the things I see is that there is such a respect, such a need for persons with technical backgrounds in every field, especially because the level of development in different countries is so unique, or they're switching things so fast. And I think a very modern country could be maybe the Netherlands, where they're going to go practically zero fossil fuels in the next 2–3 years. So they have to convert so many new systems away from electricity and fossil fuels into new systems. So everywhere I go, no matter where the level is, the discussion comes up sooner or later how wonderful students are to have technical backgrounds and technical universities. And then when I come back to the United States, all of a sudden I'm faced with exactly the opposite. The people says, oh no, we don't need people in the technical vocational fields. And I sort of sit here, did I miss something? Or being that you went to a school, high school, and then went on to your program, what happened? What happened to this whole idea that we need people with technical backgrounds?
We go through that, and I know that right now I'm very involved with Bosco Tec in it's developing its courses and things that need to be done, and the focus has been lately into preparing the young men going through there for college and universities. According to the demand that's touted, is that they need to have that college preparation, a job anywhere, do it anymore. And I think part of what really is coming across is the fact that technology has evolved so much in our field. Just to be able to understand the equipment that we have, the knowledge has to be everything from critical thinking to make sure that you're going through and understanding how that piece of equipment is running, and being able to manage it and control it so it's going to be at its peak production that you required. So I think a lot of that has changed radically because of technology. So the level of education that somebody needs is a higher level of education, but it's still required hands-on to be able to get the things done. Cars, for instance, and unfortunately we closed that technology at the school, but we're thinking that we have to bring part of that back, because as cars develop, yes, you're going to need more technical people to understand how that's running, but at a higher level of technology, because straight combustion be a electrical engine that requires a lot of information to go through, and a lot of computerization that's going to be able to manage it. In fact, right now, a car has a lot of computerization that requires a different knowledge, yet it's still technically based.
Here's another angle to this. I support the idea that we need people with technical backgrounds. Many parts of the world have a polytechnical universities. And I come back to the United States and I say to people, people should get vocational ed. And they said, well, there's a medical dental school down the street, and then there's a school down there to teach people how to do motorcycles. And I said, wait a minute, time out. When I'm talking about technical colleges, what comes to my mind is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Georgia Institute of Technology, Caltech Institute of Technology, Harvey Mudd, whether it be Cal Poly Pomona, they're on the technical side universities, where yes, it is theoretical, but it's also has to be hands-on. Or kids learning to do solar cars, in Cal State LA. These are technical fields at the very high end. Now we need space. SpaceX is down in Hawthorne. We need people with technical backgrounds, and yet it doesn't seem like we get it here in the United States. So what am I
Well,
missing?
they keep on touting the fact that you can get everything out of the books. You go through and you read your books and you're going to have the knowledge to be able to get the things done. But the reality and what we find is the fact that the books is only going to give you part of what you actually need. The other part,
Oh.
you have to go through and do it. You have to do hands-on to be able to go through, experience it, fail, learn it, and that's part of the critical thinking. And then when you're working in so many different parts of a piece of equipment, you're working with a team. And that team and communications with that team to be able to get the things done. But it's all part of hands-on getting things done. And those are the areas that sometimes we miss and we don't understand.
Yeah, when I looked at the roster of backgrounds, it said avionics, science metallurgy, space metallurgy, X-ray metallurgy. These are things that are very, very elaborate. I don't see 4-year liberal arts educations dealing with those. They don't take part of that. Texas A&M does it. They do a lot of scientific research. So do we need more high-ended technical schools programs? Because we can't just ship everybody off to a 4-year liberal arts college. It's just we're falling behind technology. Chinese, the Indians, all this new stuff that's coming out.
And I think you see exactly where the United States, we have always been a leader in the technology field, but we're starting to fall behind because a lot of that type of studying and teaching has kind of diminished. And now it's coming back. It's very, very critical. And I don't think we're going to be able to attain the accomplishments that we're looking for, such as the artificial technology and robotics. They go hand in hand. You have to understand both of them to be able to get and accomplish those things. The self-driving cars, the rockets to the moon, all that information. I mean, you take a look and you see how we accomplish getting to Mars and all the elaborate procedures to be able to land a piece on Mars. And if you could take a look at all the work that they did, all the studying, all the preparation they did prior to getting there, it's amazing. It's all hands-on, making sure that it gets done. And that's all technology-based and learning by doing.
I think we don't appreciate what you're making clear in my mind, hands-on. It's not just, here's an engineering book, either you write it or you follow it. You're developing systems that don't exist, and there will be problems that no one anticipated, and it will be so meticulous that it will require people that have that hands-on experience through their high school and college education. And if we go all one way, where everybody is going to be liberal arts bachelors in social sciences, which is okay, nothing wrong with that. We need that people. We're lacking in the technical field, and that's what I'm thinking I'm learning from you, not only in the show, but also in the discussions we've had in the past.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, not to diminish the importance of the liberal arts and everything else that we have, because those are also are important things that we have to keep in mind and be aware of. But to be able to move the future, technology is what's going to move us into the future.
The future, one of my favorite topics that I like to analyze and look at, and you and I have had discussions over this point. What do you see as the future given in your field and beyond that? Because you deal with technical backgrounds, especially through Bosco Tec here in San Gabriel Valley.
What are the robotics that are coming through and the different things that are being created, and you can see it in your smartphones. And then the other thing that I keep on seeing is the fact of artificial intelligence. And here's an area that, all of a sudden the liberal arts has to come in to be able to understand what artificial intelligence is really going to accomplish and how far it's going to go, take us away from our humanity and how much we have to control within the humanity that's there. So those are areas that we're going to have to combine very, very carefully, and not let it take over us, as a lot of the discussions and a lot of the futuristic books talk about, as HAL, the movie 2001 Space Odyssey, brings out. So these are areas that we have to be very, very careful with. But the fact is that automation is coming over and taking a lot of things, and we're going to have to be able to see how we're going to control both the workforce and how that workforce is going to be relating to the automation factor, and how we're going to keep the rest of us, or the rest of those that are not going to be part of that, busy and not get bored and not find something to do, which is going to be important. Otherwise, that's where a lot of the problems come in also.
Yeah, that's a whole different issue that I also have been analyzing, is the whole concept of doing, what is it, is the word is basic income. It's something that has been ongoing. So, but that's also very critical. As we're getting close to the end of the show, I want to slip this in. We read that probably an Oxford study that almost 50% of the jobs can be taken over by automation in the next few years.
Right.
So there's been a big discussion of that. But I've been aware that they don't say 100%. They say 50%.
Yeah.
And I begin to realize that the other 45, a lot of it is service oriented, where people want to talk to people. I get that. Those are not going to go away. But then there's a certain portion that are technically based. A computer is not going to do it. A computer may show you on a screen, but they're not going to go out and make you the part for the plane that's going to fly into space and back on land. It's not going to make you the wheels that is going to be used, or sort of better materials to land things. It's not going to do all the new quantum material that is needed to put things together. That is still a technical background career that people have to do.
And then the other area that I look at is the fact that, once that piece of equipment is in process, it's not going to last forever. You've got to maintain it. You have to make sure it's working correctly. You have to fix it. You got to repair it. You've got to recreate the parts that need to be there, and you have to improve it. So those are the areas that are going to be very, very critical, and where manpower will still be very, very important to get these things accomplished.
Wow. So I feel a sense of support that we cannot get rid of technology, vocational education. If anything, we have to improve upon it. We need to bring it back ASAP and give these kids a hands-on training, because it's not all just going to be, gee, a computer's going to come in and build me my house.
Exactly. But I think it's changing and evolving into a different type of vocational training, to where it's much beyond to what we were used to before. We were in an industrial world before. Now we're going into an electronic technology world that's going to take us into a whole different area. And the demands on the knowledge is going to be much greater.
But vocational ed is still going to be required.
It's going to be, vocational ed is going to be very critical, because it's going to now incorporate those areas that used to be only left for the higher educational part. That's what I'm looking at.
Great. Thank you very much, Manuel. And before we close off, I'd like to give you a few minutes to sort of give us your closing statements on what we've talked about and other areas that I know you focus on in terms of education, the youth, and being prepared to enter the 21st century technological world.
Well, it's when you go through that, you take a look at everything that I've seen. It's been exciting to see how it's been evolving, but more challenging to see what we need to do. The work that I do at the school has opened my eyes in a lot of areas that we still need to keep on giving the young men, the young girls that are coming through, the opportunity to be able to understand this and take us to a whole different level. Which, when you work with these with the youth, you take a look that they're learning now more through the computer than with mentors, and that's something we're going to have to also look and help them, because experience has a lot to do with making sure that things move forward quicker. And this is something that we're going to have to be able to support our youth and be able to mentor them into the future.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. You've given me a whole new perspective on this. But I'm sort of relieved to find out that I did miss the boat. It's just the idea that we sort of lost, I think, personally, we've lost our view that somehow or other we made vocational education as something that is not necessary now with the computer age. And I'm saying, I don't think so. I don't think that's possible. Computer can't do everything. And who's going to take care of, make sure the computer is working right? So that's what I'm learning from you today. Manuel, thank you very much for being on our program. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had Manuel L. Franco being on our program. He is also part of the wonderful company here, Monarch Litho in Montebello, and he is the Director on Creative Services. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, reactions to the show, please feel free to contact me at afsanchez66@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to forward it over to Manuel. Also, if you would like to participate in this discussion that will be ongoing about the idea of the future of today, you know, looking at vocational ed as being not necessarily something small or minor that we can just sort of disperse on, but the importance of it. We invite your participation as well. Manuel, thank you for being on the program, and I look forward to having you into future shows as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being on our program. Until our next program in the series of The Future of Tomorrow. I'm Armando F. Sanchez. I'm the CEO and producer of the show. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. With that, I say adios.
Adios.